All areas of Trinidad and Tobago are now under a state of emergency. The news came from National Security Minister Brigadier John Sandy, who was updating the country following earlier reports that the 9 to 5 curfew applied only to limited hotspots for crime.
It's been 21 years since the country has seen anything of this magnitude, a widespread curfew in 86 communities within the local government corporations of Arima, San Fernando, Port of Spain, Diego Martin, Chagones and San Juan Laventil. Initially, the government was seeking to implement a curfew from 6 at night to 6 in the morning, but it's now shifted from 9 to 5.
But because primarily of other entities making a case for a later starting time. In particular, our Muslim brothers, who, as you're aware, they at present they are observing the holy month of Ramadan and they have their prayers at various times. So we extended it to 9, from 9 to 5 instead.
During these hours, no one would be allowed on the streets within these districts, but special passes will be given to persons whose work depends on it. All this at the discretion of law enforcement officers. For the first night only, there would be some reprieve.
In the unlikely event, the few people who do not acquire those passes by the time they need to be out on the streets after 9, we are asking them to walk with 2 forms of photo ID.
And political analyst Peter Wickham joins us live on the Evening News to discuss the implications of what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Peter, welcome.
Good evening, thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, let's first talk about why this is happening. Is it an indication or an admission of sorts that crime has got out of hand in the Twin Island Republic?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's certainly some that would argue that crime got out of hand in the Twin Island Republic a long time ago. I'm wondering whether this may have been inspired by the Jamaica situation, the fact that during the Dulles Court issue, Jamaica imposed a state of emergency that appeared to offer benefits in relation to the reduction of crime. So the Trinidad government, in an attempt to demonstrate that it is dealing decisively with the issue of crime, has now imposed a similar measure. As to whether it is a reasonable reaction or whether it is an overreaction, I think this is really the issue that is being debated in the Twin Island Republic now. And I think there are some issues that they will need to consider, issues of economy, issues of cost. There is a nighttime economy in Trinidad and Tobago that is pretty big and pretty important to a lot of very poor people. And I think a lot of those persons are suffering. And I do feel that when the costs of this are counted next week, then there will be a question as to whether or not it has had a deleterious economic effect on many of these people.
Yeah, I take that point because in the package that we had earlier, we've had religious groups and other groups calling for it to be extended past the earlier point that it was given. But on the other hand, what does this mean politically for the Prasad Bisesar administration?
Yeah, well, I think the Prasad Bisesar administration is assuming that people will react well to it, that it will favor them politically, and people will see her as being a tough prime minister who's tough on crime. Certainly the short-term reaction will always be good. As in the Jamaica situation, crime dropped substantially. I mean, if there's no one on the streets, then it's unlikely that there will be crimes. The reality, however, is that a long-term sustainable reduction in crime is difficult to measure. And the political problem with this is that it is easy in the short term to say you've been successful. A year from now, she can't have a state of emergency still in place. How can she demonstrate success over the long term and demonstrate that she has been able to move decisively to deal with the problem? That one is unlikely.
Okay, and this move is one major step. Do you think, given the fact that crime is rising across the region, will this perhaps prod other leaders to go in this direction?
Well, I mean, already the opposition in St. Kitts has asked for that to happen. They've asked for a state of emergency. I think that other governments would be ill-advised, especially governments which are tourism dependent. American Airlines has cancelled flights into Trinidad and Tobago. I would think that for countries like St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbados and St. Lucia and so on that are also experiencing crime, we would not want to go in that direction because tourism doesn't work well with a state of emergency.
Good evening, I'm Kent Jerson with the Business Report. A comprehensive review of the sugar industry in Barbados has concluded that it needs more than $250 million for a realistic chance to be viable. The study was funded by the European Union and conducted by Landell Mills Limited, one of the world's leading international developing consulting firms. The objective of the review was to facilitate the transition from the traditional sugar to a new sugarcane industry that functions more efficiently and is more profitable. The 18-month study started in January last year and has resulted in a number of recommendations for this to be achieved, as well as improving the productivity and efficiency of the industry. Special focus has been placed on the operations of the Barbados Agricultural Management Company, BAMC Limited, given its predominance in the industry and its role as a government-owned entity. In fact, the study suggests that in the absence of the BAMC, the industry's chances of survival are slim. But for the BAMC to effectively play its role, it has to be recapitalized, and therein lies one of the biggest challenges, since the financial injection required is about $272 million, about $240 million of which is needed to pay off the debts on BAMC's books. The review also highlights a number of other challenges. These include the failure to apply husbandry practices on time, the absence of any systematic diagnosis for machine failure, and the failure to recognize the value and importance of well-known industry best practices. Another recommendation coming out of the study is the development of a food crop plan, which, when combined with a revitalized sugarcane farming operation, is expected to impact positively on the overall financial position of the BAMC. The draft final report containing the main findings, conclusions and recommendations was discussed by the relevant stakeholders and government officials at a workshop held on August 17th. The final report from the consultants is expected by the end of this month. In other news, shareholders of LIAT are moving urgently to replace the airline's fleet of aircraft. Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, says the decision has been taken to acquire new planes. He was speaking after a meeting of the shareholder governments attended by Barbados' Prime Minister Frondell Stewart and his Antigua and Barbuda counterpart, Baldwin Spencer.
Within 2 weeks, we are going to get the data relating to fleet renewal and fleet expansion, and we'll have a meeting in order to decide where do we go with the new planes which we intend to have.
Dr. Gonsalves says the shareholders are also seeking to resolve the industrial relations problems which the airline is facing.
Prime Minister Spencer, who is a trade unionist, he's going to Grenada on Monday, hoping to meet with the governments and the union, TAU, with Senator Humphrey, who is the leader of the union there. But they have a particular problem which has to be resolved. So that step is being taken, and the shareholders are getting directly involved in that.
A quick look at the stocks now. Here's a summary of today's trading on some of the region's exchanges.
And a very good evening to all, and we observe cloudy skies, scattered showers, and even some thunderstorm activity here in Barbados and across the island chain as Irene continues to exert her influence on the weather conditions across the region. Well, let's take a look though at the high temperature. Amid all of the cloud we still got up to 31.9 degrees Celsius at the airport, and the minimum temperature was 25.2. At 6 o'clock, skies were fair. The temperature down to 27.8 degrees Celsius, the humidity 85%, and the winds out of the south-southeast at 13 kilometers per hour. And this is having a major impact on the weather conditions, that south-southeasterly flow. Now, in the far eastern Atlantic, Barbados and the island chain around here, there are two areas of low pressure, rather. These are skirting the Cape Verde Islands. None of these systems at this time, though, showing any real significant signs of any enhancement, but we'll nevertheless continue to monitor them very, very, very closely. And as I indicated, Hurricane Irene at 5 o'clock this evening, the center of that system was in the vicinity of 20.9 degrees north, 71.5 degrees west, and the system is about now lashing the Turks and Caicos Islands, moving to the west-northwest at about 9 miles per hour, maximum sustained winds of 90 miles per hour. Let's put the cloud in motion. There was a feeder band feeding into this system. that was responsible for introducing a significant amount of moisture in Barbados and the region. Here is that band. It swept in from the northeast over the island chain and generated a considerable amount of instability, of course, adding to the already unsettled scenario that we have here in Barbados. Well, the band is now to the west of the island chain, and as a result, the fair skies we had here in Barbados, but the moisture, that is expected to continue to be well above normal. Now, in addition to the influence of the feeder band, we have this pronounced southeasterly flow, and that is pulling moisture from way down in the region of the intertropical convergence zone across the island chain, and that generally is going to be maintaining cloudy skies and scattered showers across Barbados tonight, along with some isolated thunderstorms, and those conditions could very well extend into tomorrow. Of course, there's going to be a marginal drying out into Thursday, but then there is a low-level trough in this general region. That is going to be moving closer to the region around Friday, and we're going to be looking at a significant increase in moisture once again, and of course some scattered showers. I'll be back after the break to give you an insight in what we're going to be looking at for the next couple of days. Welcome back on Bill with Hurricane Irene pushing further to the northwest. The influence on the region is going to be less and less, so that tomorrow we're going to be looking at a marginal fall off in the moisture, further fall off by Thursday. But as I indicated, there's this low level trough that is moving into the picture that could very well bring some showers by Friday. But as Irene pushes to the northwest, the Turks and Caicos Islands, the Bahamas, up in the vicinity of the Florida Peninsula, that system could strengthen once it gets over open water, and there's potential for a tremendous amount of rainfall, wind damage, of course, the like. But for us here in Barbados, take a look now at our 4-day prediction. We're going to be looking at Wednesday through to Saturday. We're looking at partly cloudy skies tomorrow, some scattered showers. Towards Thursday, the drying out of the atmosphere marginally, but by Friday, moisture levels are going to be on the increase, instability levels are going to be increased. We're looking at scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms towards Saturday, partly cloudy skies, some scattered shower activity. Some stats now for us here in Barbados, along with our forecast. Sunrise is going to be at 5:47. Sunset is going to be at 14 minutes after 6. The tides, the first high tide 11 minutes to 1 in the AM. The second is going to be at 11:50 in the PM. The first low tide 8 minutes after 6 tomorrow morning. The second is going to be at 5:35 in the PM. The seas slight to moderate in open water, swell speaking at 2 meters. And the winds across Barbados and across the region, east southeasterly to easterly, 10 to 35 kilometers per hour. And the outlook for Barbados tonight, partly cloudy to cloudy with some showers and possible isolated thunderstorms. Come tomorrow, we are expecting partly cloudy to cloudy skies, some scattered shower activity expected, but a marginal drain out of the atmosphere is being seen.